Hello there, and welcome to the Sleep at Night channel. Tonight, we are drifting into the quiet mystery of intelligence, a subject that sits at the center of every thought we have ever had. Intelligence is not only a human trait, it is a presence that appears in forests, in oceans, in animals with minds unlike our own, and even in the silent patterns that guide the universe. It is the strange ability to imagine, to solve, to adapt, and to create new possibilities from almost nothing. As you settle in, imagine intelligence as a hidden current flowing through everything, shaping life in ways we hardly notice. In some ways, it is familiar and comforting, and in others it feels so strange that it changes how we see the world. It is one of scientists' greatest frontiers, and we are only just beginning to uncover its secrets. If you enjoy these quiet journeys, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a thought below. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. But for now, all you need to do is rest. Let your eyes relax, allow your body to soften, and let your mind drift gently into wonder. Let us begin. Intelligence may have emerged when early humans began to dream more vividly. In the deep nights of our early ancestors, long before writing or cities, sleep would have wrapped small bands of humans in darkness and vulnerability. Inside those resting bodies, the dreaming mind could roam freely, replaying past events and inventing scenes that had never actually happened. A hunter might relive a close call with a predator, but in the dream, the escape was smoother, the path clearer, the reaction faster. Over many nights, these silent rehearsals could refine instincts without the cost of real danger. Dreams blend faces, places, and emotions into strange new combinations, creating a mental workshop where the mind experiments with social situations, future threats, and hidden opportunities. The individuals whose dream worlds offered better practice and richer imagination may have navigated the waking world with more foresight and subtlety. Over countless generations, these slight advantages could have helped shape the complex storytelling intelligence humans carry today. The brain can rewrite its own wiring in a single night of intense learning. After a long day spent struggling with a difficult idea or a new skill, the brain does not simply rest. As you sleep, billions of connections quietly reconfigure, strengthening some pathways and weakening others. Neurons that fired together repeatedly during the day are more likely to form stronger links, creating routes that make future thinking smoother. Intricate chemical signals adjust the sensitivity of synapses, the tiny gaps where one cell speaks to another. In deep sleep, the brain replays patterns of activity from waking practice, as if running internal drills without conscious awareness. Even in a single night, this replay can carve new paths through the neural landscape, turning clumsy attempts into more fluent performance by morning. A piece of music feels easier. The pattern in data becomes clearer. A foreign phrase sounds more natural. The skull hides a restless city of cells, tirelessly editing yesterday into a better version of tomorrow. Some animals outsmart humans in tests designed by humans themselves. When scientists create puzzles to measure cleverness, they often expect human minds to sit at the top of the scale. Yet certain animals quietly overturn that assumption. In tasks that require noticing subtle probabilities, pigeons choose the mathematically correct answer more consistently than many humans who are swayed by hunches and stories. In visual memory challenges, some primates recall the position of many symbols after only a fleeting glimpse, far beyond the recall of typical adults. These performances do not simply show quick reflexes. They reveal specialized strengths shaped by evolutionary pressures tuned to different environments and survival needs. While humans excel at language, metaphor, and long-term planning, other creatures shine in domains where precision, pattern recognition, or sensory detail matter most. The tests themselves, crafted by human hands, become mirrors reflecting our biases about what intelligence should look like. And in those reflections, some species stand taller than we do. A tiny portion of the brain predicts your decisions before you are aware of them. Long before you feel the moment of choice, a small network of neurons has already begun to lean toward one outcome. In regions that prepare movement and select actions, electrical activity slowly shifts, favoring one possibility, while your conscious mind still feels undecided. This gradual buildup, unfolding over fractions of a second, reflects the accumulation of evidence, habits, and subtle preferences shaped by many past experiences. By watching these patterns, researchers can often guess which option a person will choose just a moment before the person feels they have made the decision. And conscious awareness then arrives like a narrator stepping onto the stage after the main plot twist, explaining a choice already in motion. This does not remove the meaning of intention or responsibility, but it does suggest that what we call a decision is the visible crest of a deeper wave of neural activity, rolling forward beneath the surface of awareness. Intelligence rises when the brain learns to ignore most of reality. Every moment, the senses deliver far more information than any mind could ever process. Light floods the eyes. Vibrations press into the ears. Countless signals travel from skin, muscles, and organs. Intelligent behavior emerges not by absorbing all of this detail, but by discarding most of it. The brain quickly learns which patterns matter and which can fade into the background. It filters out the steady hum of a fan, the constant pressure of clothing, the repetitive shapes of a familiar room. By compressing and simplifying, it frees precious resources to track change, unexpected events, and meaningful relationships. The art of ignoring becomes a powerful cognitive tool. Minds that excel at filtering build cleaner internal models of the world, models that focus on cause, consequence, and opportunity, rather than raw sensation. In that focused space, complex reasoning, planning, and creativity can rise above the noise. Certain octopuses can solve puzzles they have never seen before. In the dim water of an aquarium or the shifting light of a reef, an octopus meets a closed container that smells faintly of food. No one shows it how to open the device. With flexible arms lined with sensitive suckers, it explores every edge, hinge, and surface. In some species, this exploration becomes fast problem-solving. The animal discovers how to twist a cap, slide a latch, or pull a plug with movements that reveal more than instinct. Each arm tests different approaches, feeding information back into a distributed nervous system. Much of its neural tissue lies outside the main head, as if parts of its body think locally while still contributing to a shared goal. When the container finally opens, the moment reflects curiosity, tactile memory, and flexible control converging into a display of intelligence that evolved along a path entirely separate from the vertebrate mind. Your brain generates ideas by mixing signals never meant to touch. Inside the skull, networks that evolved for different purposes constantly interact. A region that once guided hand movements now joins abstract reasoning about tools. Areas that track space and movement help navigate social situations and numbers. When you relax and let thoughts drift, distant regions begin to synchronize, linking emotional memory with factual knowledge, sensory imagery with language, and past experience with imagined futures. Signals spill across boundaries. Insight feels sudden, but beneath that feeling lies a long, slow mixing of neural currents, originally shaped for separate tasks. The mind turns accidental meetings of signals into deliberate invention. Some trees use chemical messages so sophisticated they resemble primitive thought. In a quiet forest, a single tree detects the bite of an insect. Within moments, chemical changes begin producing bitter compounds that make the leaves less appealing. At the same time, airborne molecules drift outward, carrying information to nearby trees, which adjust their own defenses as though warned of an invisible threat. Underground roots connect with fungal networks that move nutrients and signals across long distances. Through these shared pathways, a struggling tree can receive support from one that is thriving, or send distress cues that shift the behavior of its companions. The timing, precision, and context of these exchanges create patterns that look surprisingly like problem-solving, without neurons or a central brain. The forest still gathers information, spreads it, and responds in ways that benefit the community. The brain simulates entire futures in the time it takes to blink. Before you step off a curb, reach for a handhold, or speak, internal models flash into existence in regions handling memory and spatial navigation. Patterns sweep through imagined paths faster than your body could ever move. The mind rapidly tries out different sequences, predicting obstacles and the reactions of others. Most of this work happens outside awareness, compressed into moments so brief they feel instantaneous. And when you finally act, your choice carries the imprint of many invisible rehearsals. The same machinery supports more abstract planning, letting you picture career changes, relationships, or creative projects unfolding across months or years, all within a brief daydream. By running these compressed futures, the brain grants some of the benefits of experience without exposing you to every risk. Each action you take carries faint echoes of countless unrealized possibilities that lived for only a heartbeat inside your mind. Human intelligence may depend on neurons that fire in beautifully imperfect patterns. If each neuron reacted in a rigid, repetitive way, your mind would behave like a perfectly wound clock, accurate but predictable. Instead, neural firing contains subtle variability. Cells respond strongly or weakly, or sometimes not at all, even when the stimulus seems the same. At first, it looks like noise, an apparent flaw in a delicate system. Yet this irregularity expands the range of possible responses, allowing the brain to represent shades of meaning instead of simple yes or no categories. Networks built from such cells can explore many internal states while remaining stable enough to function. In this flexible regime, small shifts in experience can nudge patterns of activity toward new configurations that encode fresh insights. The mind gains the power to generalize, to tolerate ambiguity, and to combine ideas in new ways. Intelligence grows not from perfect precision, but from structured imperfection woven through the firing of countless cells. Bees can recognize human faces even with a brain smaller than a grain of sand. In a busy garden filled with moving petals and shifting colors, a bee must quickly separate friend from foe, flower from distraction. Despite its tiny neural system,
It can learn to distinguish individual human faces with surprising accuracy. It does this not by seeing a face as humans do, but by breaking an image into edges, shapes, and contrasts, then storing this arrangement as a visual signature. When the same person appears again, the bee compares the signature to its memory and responds accordingly. This ability comes from an efficient system that uses only a few thousand specialized cells to encode complex images. Instead of processing every detail, the bee focuses on the most informative features, creating a lean, powerful method of recognition, showing that intelligence does not depend only on size, but also on elegant design, low waste, and the skill of extracting meaning from the smallest fragments of perception. Your brain predicts the world before it sees it, and often mistakes the prediction for reality. In every waking moment, your mind quietly guesses what will happen next. Before a sound reaches awareness or a shape becomes fully visible, internal models start anticipating the world. These predictions arise from memories, expectations, and patterns learned over a lifetime. When sensory information finally arrives, the brain compares it with its forecast, blending the two until they match well enough to feel seamless. Most of the time, this makes experience smooth and efficient, letting you move through life without interpreting every flicker or shift. But the guesses are not always right. The brain fills missing details, invents edges that are not there, and smooths contradictions that might otherwise feel jarring. This delicate merging of expectation and perception shapes what you believe is real. Your sense of the world is not a raw recording. It is a crafted story built from constant predictions. Dolphins invent new whistles to name ideas they have never encountered. In the blue corridors of the ocean, their whistles ripple like underwater melodies and carry structure, rhythm, and variation. Dolphins improvise new whistles when faced with new situations, creating custom acoustic shapes for unfamiliar objects, new individuals, or novel experiences. Within social groups, these invented sounds spread as others learn to interpret them. Each whistle becomes a bridge between thought and expression, allowing the animals to share information with stunning nuance. This ability to generate symbolic sounds grows from a brain shaped by cooperation, hunting coordination, and complex social bonds. Dolphins must track shifting relationships within pods, respond to subtle cues, and adapt quickly. Their expanding vocal repertoire becomes a cognitive toolkit, offering new associations whenever the world presents something unexpected. The mind learns faster when it misunderstands something first, a paradox at the core of deep learning. An incorrect assumption creates tension between expectation and evidence. That tension fuels rapid improvement. Misunderstanding exposes the boundaries of knowledge and forces the brain to reorganize its internal models. Neurons that once fired confidently in one pattern must shift to include new information. When the correction comes, it produces a sharper, more resilient understanding than if the idea had been absorbed without friction. This process appears in children who struggle with a concept before mastering it, in adults who confront mistaken beliefs, and in artificial systems that refine their predictions through repeated error. The initial confusion opens a cognitive space where new connections can form more freely. The mind becomes more attentive, more flexible, and more capable of generating insights that would not appear without the spark of an early mistake. Ravens can plan several moves ahead without ever practicing the task. High on a wind-swept branch, a raven studies a distant reward. To reach it, it must perform a sequence of actions it has never executed before, without trial or guidance. The bird evaluates the objects available and selects the tool that will enable the later steps. This ability reflects an inner simulation, a rehearsal in which the raven imagines events before acting. Rather than relying on instinct, it imagines how each object will behave, how obstacles may shift, and how its movements interact with the environment. This foresight requires an understanding of causality and physical principles far beyond simple learning. It reveals a mind capable of holding multiple possibilities at once, discarding those that fail and choosing the one path that leads to success. In this quiet moment of planning, the raven displays reasoning that rivals much larger brains. Human creativity may emerge from neural noise that other species filter out. Inside the brain, signals do not flow with perfect order. Mixed within purposeful firing is a layer of irregular activity that seems random. Many species suppress this internal noise to achieve precision and efficiency. Humans, however, preserve part of it. This gentle chaos creates openings for unlikely connections, allowing ideas that usually remain apart to drift close enough to combine. A stray memory may collide with a sensory impression. A half-formed image may merge with a mathematical concept. These collisions generate new possibilities, often without conscious effort. When attention relaxes, the noise grows louder, letting the mind wander through a broader landscape of thoughts. Over time, structured patterns rise from this wandering, producing metaphors, inventions, stories, and imaginative leaps. Creativity becomes the art of shaping this controlled turbulence into meaning. Elephants comfort distressed herdmates with behaviors that resemble empathy. On a sunlit savanna, an elephant senses agitation in a companion and approaches with calm intention. The touch of a trunk across the face or shoulder carries gentle reassurance. A soft rumble vibrates through the air, tuned to comfort. Others may gather offering presence rather than force. These actions arise from an understanding of emotional states. Elephants track the mood of their herd, remembering past events that shaped each relationship. When one suffers fear, grief, or uncertainty, others respond with comfort that seems rooted in shared feeling, not simple imitation. This emotional intelligence strengthens their social bonds, helping families endure hardship and protect their vulnerable members. Their soothing
Brain reconstructs the experience from fragments scattered across many regions, stitching sensory impressions, emotional context, and meaning into a single, coherent whole. During this reconstruction, the memory becomes open to alteration. New details blend with old ones, interpretations shift, and the narrative takes on the shape of who you are in that moment. Once returned to storage, it carries these subtle revisions. This process allows memories to remain flexible, adapting to new understanding and new circumstances. It also means that the past is partially created by the present. Through this dynamic rewriting, the brain maintains a library that stays relevant to the challenges of life, rather than freezing experiences in rigid form. Squid neurons use exotic biochemistry that lets them edit their own genetic messages. In the dim water of the open ocean, squid rely on a nervous system built for rapid action, shifting color displays, and sudden bursts of movement. Their neurons use an unusual biochemical strategy that allows them to rewrite portions of their RNA, the molecules that act as working copies of genetic instructions. Instead of relying solely on the fixed information encoded in DNA, squid can adjust these RNA sequences to fine-tune how their proteins behave. This helps them respond to changing temperatures, shifting currents, and complex environmental pressures. Editing RNA on the fly gives them an adaptive flexibility that most animals lack. By altering the messages inside their cells, they can modify how electrical signals travel along their giant axons and maintain precise control over their fast-moving bodies. This remarkable ability reveals a form of molecular intelligence that operates beneath conscious awareness, a cellular system that adapts minute by minute to the fluid world around them. Music can restructure thought patterns in ways that increase spatial reasoning. When musical tones rise and fall in carefully arranged sequences, the brain forms patterns of expectation that synchronize activity across regions involved in timing, planning, and prediction. Listening to music can guide neural rhythms into orderly states that encourage more coherent thought. Over time, these rhythmic patterns influence how the brain processes relationships in space, such as rotations, distances, and geometric transformations. Practicing a musical instrument deepens this effect by training fine motor control, auditory discrimination, and working memory simultaneously. As these systems strengthen, they knit together more efficiently, allowing the mind to form clearer mental maps and track complex spatial structures with greater ease. This influence extends beyond the music itself. The structured flow of melody and harmony encourages the brain to explore new connections, supporting reasoning in fields such as mathematics and navigation.
Music becomes more than sound, it becomes a quiet architect of cognition. Certain plants anticipate light cycles and change their growth before dawn arrives. Long before the sun rises, certain plants begin adjusting their orientation, metabolism, and internal chemistry. These shifts occur even in controlled environments where the timing of external light remains constant. The behavior emerges from internal clocks built into their cells. These track the passage of time through cycles of gene activation and suppression, creating rhythms that align with the turning of the planet. As dawn approaches, plants activate processes that prepare their leaves for photosynthesis. They adjust the opening of tiny pores, redistribute sugars, and alter organe hormones so they can gather energy more efficiently when the first light finally appears. This anticipation helps them survive in environments where every moment of sunlight matters. The precision of these internal rhythms reveals a quiet sophistication. Without nerves or brains, plants still sense patterns that extend far beyond immediate conditions. Human problem-solving improves when the mind begins to wander. When focus softens and attention slips away from a stubborn problem, the mind does not truly switch off. Activity shifts into networks that connect distant memories, half-formed impressions, and forgotten details. This roaming state lets ideas move into new combinations that strict concentration often blocks. A passing smell can link to a scene from childhood. A sound can pull up a lesson learned long ago. While you fold laundry, walk a familiar path, or stare at the ceiling in the dark, the brain continues to reshuffle patterns beneath awareness. Possibilities that were previously invisible slide into view. An approach that felt impossible a moment ago suddenly seems natural. This effect appears in artists, scientists, and anyone facing tangled choices. Wandering thought becomes a quiet workshop where new structures of understanding are built without effort. What looks like distraction from the outside becomes on the inside a deep reorganization of how a problem is framed. Termite mounds behave like climate-regulating machines built by collective intelligence. Under intense sun and heavy rain, towering earth structures rise from the ground, constructed grain by thousands of tiny workers. Inside these mounds, air flows through a network of passages that channel heat and moisture in intricate patterns. Each insect follows simple rules. It carries soil to locations that feel too warm or too damp, removes material where air seems stagnant, and responds to subtle changes in scent and temperature. From these countless small actions, a ventilation system appears that keeps the inner chambers close to ideal conditions for the growing colony. The mound adjusts over time as seasons shift, with new channels opening and old ones closing. No architect holds the plan in its mind. The structure emerges from constant feedback between insects and environment. In effect, the mound behaves like a self-tuning device that measures and balances the climate using nothing more than instinctive behavior. Infants show signs of statistical reasoning before they understand words. Even in the first months of life, human babies track regularities in their surroundings with surprising precision. When they watch shapes appear in patterns or hear streams of syllables, their gaze and attention reveal that they sense which combinations are common and which are rare. Experiments show that when an event violates these emerging expectations, their eyes linger slightly longer, as if something in the scene does not quite fit the forming model in their minds. They have no vocabulary, no formal training, and no explicit grasp of numbers, yet their brains quietly tally how often certain sounds follow others, how frequently lines move in particular directions, and how objects tend to interact. This sensitivity helps them separate meaningful units in language, recognize familiar arrangements in the world, and learn where to focus curiosity. Long before a child can describe a pattern, the nervous system is already measuring it, laying foundations for later reasoning with a patient and continuous internal count. Jellyfish without brains still exhibit behaviors that look strangely like learning. In open water, translucent bodies pulse with a rhythm that seems simple at first glance. However, when some species repeatedly encounter obstacles or experience particular lighting conditions, their movements begin to change in a lasting way. The networks of nerve cells spread through their bells and tentacles respond differently after prior exposure, adjusting pulse strength and timing so that collisions become less frequent and paths more efficient. There is no central control center directing this adaptation. Instead, rings of connected cells store traces of recent events in temporary changes to their responsiveness. These traces influence later activity, creating a primitive form of experience dependence. When conditions shift again, the patterns of activity shift with them. The organism behaves as if it has taken something from the past into account. This suggests that the roots of learning reach back to very simple bodies, where nervous systems are still more web than organ, and plasticity begins as slight changes in how signals ripple through living tissue. The brain compresses vast amounts of information into tiny neural sparks. Every moment, light, sound, smell, touch, and internal sensation arrive in sprawling detail. If the mind tried to store all of this in full resolution, thought would freeze under its own weight. Instead, chains of neurons transform the flood into compact codes. Groups of cells fire together in patterns that summarize edges, movements, textures, and meanings. Many details vanish, but the important relations remain. A familiar face reduces to a particular constellation of activity. A remembered route becomes a sequence of compressed steps that can later unfold into a clear mental journey. This compression is not simple shrinking. It is clever selection, preserving information that supports prediction and action while discarding background noise. When you recall an event, a relatively small spark of activity in key regions can reconstruct sounds, feelings, and images with surprising richness. Intelligence depends on this ability to pack experience into efficient symbols so that the mind can move quickly through thought instead of drowning in raw sensation. Wolves coordinate hunts through subtle movements that function as tactical messages across snowy plains or forest clearings. Groups of wolves move with an uncanny sense of shared purpose. They rarely need loud sounds to coordinate. A shift of ears, a brief pause, or a change in the angle of approach can signal an entire adjustment in strategy. Each member watches the others, constantly tracking position and speed. As prey veers one way, a wolf on the opposite flank may quicken its pace or angle outward, prompting companions to close ranks. These small movements carry meaning because they occur within a history of repeated hunts. Young animals learn by following older ones, absorbing the significance of each posture through outcome. Over time, the pack builds a library of patterns, each corresponding to a particular configuration of terrain, wind, and target. Without formal planning, the group behaves like a team, executing a practiced playbook, turning individual perception into collective action that can overcome even strong and agile prey. Human foresight emerges from brain areas that first evolved for social behavior, regions that now help you picture next week, next year, or the distant future, began as tools for tracking other minds. Early humans needed to remember who helped and who harmed, to anticipate how companions might react, and to imagine the consequences of sharing food or withholding it. These demands strengthened circuits that could build inner scenes of events that had not yet happened. Over generations, those circuits expanded their reach beyond immediate social exchanges. The same networks used to imagine a friend's response could now model the outcome of a journey, a new dwelling, or a change in hunting ground. As language grew more complex, these imagined scenes became easier to describe and share, allowing groups to coordinate around futures that existed only in thought. Planning cities, technologies, and cultures draws on neural machinery that once served small bands of foragers, revealing that our sense of tomorrow is deeply rooted in the ancient need to navigate relationships. Coral reefs exhibit collective responses that mirror decision-making in living networks. Beneath warm waves, reefs form intricate frameworks of stone and living tissue. Each coral polyp feeds, grows, and reproduces according to local conditions. Yet the community as a whole behaves like a single adaptive entity. When water temperature rises or light levels change, chemical signals spread through the reef, prompting shifts in how polyps share nutrients with their symbiotic algae. Some sections may reduce growth to conserve energy, while others ramp up repair to counter damage. These adjustments are not directed by a central leader. They emerge from the sum of local interactions, as each organism responds to both its immediate environment and the altered state of its neighbors. The result is a distributed response that can hold a complex system together in the face of stress. In this way, the reef performs something very similar to collective decision-making, selecting beneficial strategies through countless small acts of physiological negotiation. Your mind predicts other minds by simulating them, using pieces of itself. When you watch someone frown, hesitate, or light up with excitement, your own neural circuits quietly echo those expressions. Brain regions involved in your feelings and actions activate as if you were experiencing a softened version of what you observe. Using these echoes, the mind assembles an internal portrait of another person's perspective. It borrows its own patterns, then reshapes them to fit the hints it can see. Experience refines this process. Every conversation, conflict, and moment of connection adds detail to the internal models you carry. Over time, you learn to sense when someone is confused, guarded, honest, or hiding distress. Even without explicit signals, this capacity to simulate others supports trust, cooperation, teaching, and the subtle dance of everyday interaction. It is a form of intelligence that depends on using the self as raw material for understanding those who stand outside the self. Some monkeys understand fairness and protest when they see unjust treatment. In groups that share food, grooming, and protection, certain monkeys track how rewards flow between individuals. When two companions perform similar tasks and one receives a sweeter or more desirable item, the other may refuse its own lower quality reward, turn away from the giver, or display clear agitation. This reaction costs something in the short term, since rejecting food offers no immediate benefit, yet it sends a powerful signal. By reacting strongly to uneven outcomes, the animal asserts an expectation that cooperation should bring roughly balanced returns. Over repeated interactions, these responses can discourage exploitation, encouraging more even treatment within the group. Young animals observe these exchanges and gradually adopt similar standards, absorbing a sense of what counts as acceptable sharing. This early form of fairness does not rely on formal rules or language. It arises naturally from the pressures of living close to others, where lasting stability comes from mutual regard, instead of simple dominance. AIs can uncover mathematical structures no human has ever put into words. As modern learning systems work through immense fields of shapes, sequences, and numerical patterns, they explore regions far beyond the reach of human intuition. They test combinations that would take researchers whole lifetimes to examine. And in doing so, they reveal hidden relationships within equations, curves, and symbolic forms. Some of these uncovered patterns point toward connections that no mathematician had previously imagined. Human researchers can then study these findings, translate them into formal reasoning, and widen the boundaries of the field. In this way, artificial
Inspect themselves, adjust their posture, and act with intention, revealing a depth of cognition that challenges assumptions about where self-awareness begins. In the soft flicker of a mirror, a mind discovers itself. The mind recognizes patterns by forming stories, even when no real story exists. When faced with scattered details, it instinctively weaves them into shapes that feel complete. This trait comes from ancient survival pressures. Early humans gained advantages from detecting structure, even when the structure was faint. Over time, the brain grew skilled at creating narratives that explain what might be happening. This sometimes leads to false impressions, but it also fuels creativity and imagination. When people see figures in clouds, hear rhythm in random sounds, or draw meaning from coincidences, they are seeing this narrative instinct at work. It helps the mind compress complexity into something understandable. It creates emotional coherence and guides decisions, even though it can mislead. It also drives exploration and curiosity. The mind reaches for meaning by shaping the unknown into a story. Bats rely on social learning to spread new feeding strategies throughout their colonies. Within dark roosts and wide night skies, bats share knowledge through close contact and experience. When one discovers a new food source or a clever way to reach nourishment,
Others watch and imitate the behavior. Gradually, the entire colony adopts the method, turning a single insight into a shared tradition. This transmission depends on trust, memory, and the ability to map another being's actions onto one's own. Young bats follow experienced adults during night flights, repeating movements until they learn the technique through this shared learning. Colonies adapt quickly to changing environments. Feeding strategies become cultural inheritance, passed not through genes, but through living example. Human curiosity expands when the mind meets something it cannot predict. When experience fails to match expectation, a spark of attention ignites. Neural circuits heighten their activity, absorbing detail with unusual sharpness. This surge encourages exploration, allowing unfamiliar information to settle deeply into memory. Curiosity rises in the space between what is known and what lies just beyond reach, pushing the mind to investigate, compare, experiment, and reorganize understanding. These moments often shape lifelong interests, guiding people toward fields of study or creative passions they might never have pursued otherwise. The brain thrives on novelty because it expands the range of possible ideas, revealing new paths through the world. Curiosity becomes both a compass and a fuel, pulling the mind forward whenever the horizon shifts. Slime molds solve mazes through a form of memory stored in their shifting shape. Despite lacking neurons, slime molds navigate complex environments with surprising intelligence. When placed in a maze with food positioned at the exit, the organism spreads through every path. Over time, it withdraws from dead ends and reinforces the route that leads to nourishment. This process resembles memory, not stored in cells, but in the changing geometry of the organism itself. Each stretch and retreat leaves subtle chemical traces that guide future movement. As the slime mold reshapes its body, its shifting form records which paths are useful and which are not. The result is a dynamic map etched into living tissue through continuous growth and retraction. The organism learns and remembers without a brain, showing that intelligence can emerge from simple materials when organized properly. The brain builds maps of the world using rhythm, like an internal song. Deep within the brain, networks pulse with repeating patterns that act like a silent melody, guiding perception and movement. As you walk through a room or move along a familiar road, these internal rhythms synchronize with sensory input, creating a stable map that persists even when vision is limited. They provide a scaffold for memory, helping you recall where objects lie, which paths you have taken, and how far you have traveled. These internal songs shift subtly as you change pace, direction, or goal, adjusting the mental representation of space. Without these continuous pulses, navigation would become disordered and unstable. The rhythm gives the world structure inside the mind. Large predators teach their young through lessons that resemble apprenticeships. In grasslands, forests, and icy tundra, young predators learn not through instinct alone, but through guided practice. Adults demonstrate stalking, chasing, and the precise timing needed to bring down prey. They allow young animals to attempt difficult tasks while staying close enough to intervene if danger arises. Each lesson offers new challenges, gradually building skill and confidence. Young animals study every movement, absorbing how to read wind direction, how to approach without sound, and how to coordinate within a group. These sessions continue long after the young can walk and hunt in basic ways, showing that mastery requires more than instinct. It requires mentorship. Knowledge passes through generations as lived experience rather than fixed programming, giving each new cohort a richer foundation for survival. Human language may have emerged when our ancestors learned to manipulate symbols for fun. Before words carried meaning, early humans likely experimented with sounds, gestures, and marks simply because they found joy in play. These playful acts created patterns that companions began to recognize and repeat. Over time, certain sounds gained consistent associations with common objects or actions. As these associations solidified, groups developed shared symbolic systems rooted in joy, curiosity, and creative exploration. Play allowed individuals to test new forms of expression without fear of error. It encouraged imitation, variation, and elaboration. Gradually, these simple symbolic experiments grew into richer forms of communication. From casual mimicry emerged structure. From shared pleasure emerged understanding. Language may have begun as a form of imaginative play, long before it became the tool that carries thought across generations. Certain spiders plan hunting routes that require multiple sequential decisions. When these spiders explore complex terrain, they inspect branches, leaves, shadows, and angles long before making their move. Instead of relying on instinct alone, they pause to study the environment, evaluating which path will place them in the best position for an ambush. Their movements shift from quick exploration to deliberate planning as they test surfaces, backtrack, and reposition themselves with notable purpose. Once a route is chosen, they commit to it with steady precision, even if it requires several steps before reaching a vantage point. Some individuals will inspect an area, retreat to a hidden spot, and later return to follow a path they selected earlier. This reveals an inner process that stores temporary information about location, distance, and opportunity. Their ability to coordinate multiple moves without external cues suggests an unexpected depth of organization in the quiet world of leaves and webs. These spiders make decisions that unfold like miniature strategic plans. Your brain understands motion before it recognizes the objects that are moving. As soon as something shifts in the environment, specialized pathways in the visual system react to the change, even before the brain identifies what is moving. This rapid sensitivity to motion comes from ancient neural circuits that evolved to detect predators, prey, and other crucial events. These circuits respond to direction and speed with astonishing speed, allowing the mind to prepare for action before conscious recognition forms. Only after this first wave of activity does the mind identify the object moving and associate it with past knowledge.
The brain pieces together shape, texture, color, and identity. This separation gives humans a powerful advantage. Motion sets the stage, drawing attention to areas that matter, guiding gaze and sharpening perception. This early processing influences decisions, emotions, and expectations, shaping how a person responds to the world. The deep layers of the visual system reveal that understanding movement is not a refinement of sight, but one of its earliest and most fundamental purposes. Apes create tools in ways that reveal their ability to infer hidden mechanisms. When apes shape sticks, adjust branches, or modify stones, they often behave as though they understand the invisible forces that make these objects effective. They test weight, length, and flexibility, discarding tools that fail to match the demands of the task. This shows they are not simply copying learned patterns, they are reasoning through the problem. In experiments, they will choose tools that can reach beyond their direct grasp, alter objects to improve leverage, or combine materials to create shapes they have never seen before. These actions suggest that apes can imagine how a tool will behave before using it. Their choices reveal an understanding that certain hidden properties, such as strength or tension, influence results. This ability forms a link between animal cognition and early human invention. It shows that the foundations of technological thought run far deeper in evolutionary history than once believed. Human insight often appears when the brain switches into a metastable neural state. Inside the brain, countless networks hum with their own rhythms. When an insight emerges, the system briefly enters a fluid condition where these rhythms loosen, reorganize, and reconnect in unusual ways. This state lies between order and chaos. It is not fully stable, yet not disorderly. During this delicate moment, information that was stored in separate regions can suddenly interact, creating new relationships that the mind had not considered before. People often experience these moments as sudden clarity. A problem that felt impossible becomes simple. A connection that once seemed hidden becomes obvious. This shift does not result from direct effort.
It comes from the brain allowing itself to move into a flexible arrangement where ideas can reorganize freely. Once the insight forms, the system settles again, holding the new understanding in a more stable pattern. Insight arises from the brain's ability to briefly relax its normal boundaries and explore new internal configurations. Birds with tiny brains can perform logic tasks once thought impossible without a cortex. Despite their small size, the brains of certain birds contain densely packed neurons arranged in highly efficient networks. These structures allow them to reason about relationships, understand cause and effect, and perform tasks that mirror logical decision-making. Experiments show that some birds can identify whether items match certain rules, choose correct options from multiple alternatives, and even understand basic relational concepts. Their success does not come from mimicry alone. It emerges from internal processes that track patterns, test hypotheses, and evaluate outcomes. These birds solve problems using strategies that reflect structured reasoning, even though their brains lack the layered cortex seen in mammals. This discovery challenges long-held assumptions about how thinking is built. It shows that thinking does not depend on size, but on organization, density, and the way networks connect. In the flutter of wings and the tilt of a small head, powerful cognition reveals itself. Some coral polyps share nutrients in patterns that resemble resource planning. On the surface, a coral colony appears simple, but deep within its living tissue lies a complex network of exchange. When light, temperature, or nutrients shift, individual polyps adjust how they store and release energy. Some transfer resources towards sections of the colony that require urgent support, such as areas recovering from damage or portions that receive less sunlight. Others temporarily reduce their own demands to stabilize the whole. These transfers follow patterns shaped by internal signals, environmental feedback, and interactions between polyps over time. The colony behaves like a system, making choices about distribution, investing where the return will be the greatest for survival. This coordinated sharing reveals a distributed intelligence built from simple units working in harmony. It shows how life can plan without a central planner, using communication and cooperation to maintain balance in the shifting underwater world. Human genius often emerges from the ability to combine unrelated ideas. When the mind encounters two concepts that appear to have nothing in common, a unique cognitive process begins. Instead of rejecting the mismatch, human intelligence often blends the ideas, forming new structures that did not exist before. This combination can generate inventions, stories, theories, or insights that feel astonishingly original. Genius thrives on these unexpected unions. The mind searches for hidden links, allowing memories, emotions, and abstract thoughts to mix. This mixing does not follow a predictable formula. It grows from curiosity, flexibility, and a willingness to explore unfamiliar mental territory. Many breakthroughs in science, art, and philosophy have emerged from this ability to cross boundaries. Genius is not a single skill. It is a way of navigating thought that welcomes the unusual and embraces the collision of different worlds. Sea lions learn rules of syntax that mirror basic principles of human grammar. During training tasks, sea lions have demonstrated the ability to understand how elements in a sequence relate to each other. They can learn that certain symbols must appear before others, that some combinations create meaning while others do not, and that relationships between elements remain consistent even when new symbols are introduced. This ability reveals an understanding of structure rather than simple memorization. When given new arrangements, they evaluate the order and respond correctly only when the pattern matches the rule they learned. This shows sensitivity to syntax, a foundational principle in human language. Although sea lions do not speak, their ability to process structured relationships highlights a cognitive competence once believed to be uniquely human. Their minds navigate patterns with an elegance that mirrors grammatical reasoning. The brain prunes connections to become smarter by becoming simpler. As the brain develops, it creates far more connections than it will eventually keep. Over time, many of these connections are trimmed away, reducing complexity while strengthening efficiency. This pruning process allows signals to travel more cleanly, thoughts to form more precisely, and responses to sharpen. Instead of relying on sheer volume, the brain refines itself by removing paths that add noise or confusion. This simplification supports learning, memory, and reasoning. It helps the mind focus on what matters while discarding what slows it down. Pruning continues throughout life, guided by experience, practice, and changing needs. Intelligence thrives not because the brain grows endlessly, but because it becomes an elegant network shaped by what each person encounters. Some primates teach cultural traditions that persist across generations. In several primate communities, individuals pass down behaviors that reflect shared culture rather than instinct alone. Elders demonstrate techniques for finding food, preparing materials, or resolving conflicts. Young members watch closely and practice until they master each tradition. These behaviors differ from one group to another, even when the groups live in similar environments, showing that the knowledge is learned rather than inherited. Over time, these traditions evolve, gaining new variations or subtle refinements. They form collective identities that shape how groups behave and cooperate. This cultural transmission reveals a level
of intelligence grounded in community and memory. It shows that cognition is not only an individual trait, but a shared resource carried across lifetimes through the stories and practices of a group. Human intelligence may grow when we confront ideas that contradict our beliefs. When a familiar viewpoint is challenged, the brain shifts into a heightened state of evaluation that strengthens cognitive flexibility. This encounter with contradiction disrupts automatic thinking and forces deeper examination of assumptions that often remain invisible. As the mind works to integrate conflicting information, neural networks that usually operate separately begin to interact more vigorously. These interactions create new pathways that expand how a person understands the world. Over time, repeated exposure to ideas that push against comfort zones encourages the development of more nuanced reasoning. Emotional regulation also improves because the mind learns to remain steady, even when faced with perspectives that feel disorienting. This process strengthens intellectual resilience and supports growth in fields requiring creativity, open-mindedness, and critical thought. Confronting contradiction does not weaken understanding. It enriches it by prompting the brain to refine and reorganize what it knows. Ants use chemical communication networks to optimize foraging routes in real time. In a bustling colony, ants move across the ground, leaving trails of faint chemical signals that accumulate into a dynamic map of opportunity. Each ant follows portions of this map, adding new information as it travels. When a rich food source is discovered, the concentration of chemical markers increases rapidly along that path. As more ants follow it, the trail becomes stronger and more efficient. When the resource declines, fewer ants reinforce the route, and the signal begins to fade. This continuous updating creates a form of collective intelligence in which the colony adapts instantly to a changing environment. No single ant understands the entire map. Instead, each individual responds to local cues, contributing its movement to a living flow of information. This decentralized strategy allows the group to solve complex optimization problems with elegant simplicity. In the silent exchange of scent, ants build shared knowledge that guides the entire colony toward success.
Experiences that reach beyond pathogens, immune cells adapt to repeated exposure, and their adaptations can influence how the nervous system responds to stress, trauma, or recurring events. Over time, patterns of immune activity shape the body's baseline state, altering the chemistry in which neurons operate. This creates a subtle record of what an animal has lived through, written not only in synapses, but in circulating cells and signaling molecules. In certain cases, these immune patterns can even affect offspring, who inherit a body already tuned by the experiences of previous generations. Memory spreads from brain to blood, from individual life into lineage. Intelligence, in this sense, becomes a distributed phenomenon, linked to how the entire organism learns from the world, not just how its neurons fire. Human conscious awareness emerges only after the brain has already made decisions. When you feel yourself choosing, many processes have already unfolded beneath the surface. Sensory systems have gathered information, emotional centers have weighed values, and motor planning regions have begun to tilt toward one action or another. These processes occur rapidly and largely without awareness. Only when they reach a certain stage does the conscious mind experience the sense of deciding. Awareness arrives like a storyteller stepping into a play that has already begun, narrating and sometimes adjusting the outcome, but never starting from nothing. This does not remove the meaningfulness of choice. Instead, it reveals that conscious will is part of a broader, layered system, one in which reflexes, habits, and deep evaluations all contribute. The feeling of deciding is the moment when this hidden activity becomes visible to itself, and in that visibility, new possibilities for reflection and change appear. Elephants coordinate movements through vibrations that travel through the ground. As herds move across savannas, elephants send and receive signals that do not travel only through air. Low-frequency rumbles and stomps create vibrations that pass through soil and rock. Sensitive receptors in their feet and trunks detect these tremors, allowing individuals to sense distant movements of companions that may be out of sight. Through this channel, they can coordinate group travel, warn of danger, or guide stragglers without needing constant visual contact. Young elephants learn to interpret these signals by following older members and feeling the faint messages underfoot. Over long distances, this vibrational communication knits the herd into a coherent unit, even when members are scattered. The ground itself becomes a medium for shared awareness, carrying information between massive bodies that move like a single living network across the land. Human creativity may depend on brain regions that compete and cooperate at the same time. Within the brain, some networks specialize in focus control and goal-directed behavior, while others favor imagination, wandering thought, and free association. During creative work, these networks do not take turns so much as they engage in a delicate tension. The imaginative systems generate possibilities without worrying about rules, and the controlling systems evaluate, refine, and select among them. At times, they oppose each other, as discipline tries to suppress wild ideas and daydreaming resists constraint. Yet when creativity flows, they achieve a dynamic balance. The open networks roam widely, but remain tethered to a sense of purpose. The controlling networks relax just enough to allow novelty, but not so much that thoughts dissolve into chaos. This ongoing dance between cooperation and competition gives creative thinking both structure and vitality, allowing new forms to appear without losing coherence. Cuttlefish remember specific events in a way that resembles episodic memory. In shifting underwater landscapes, where the scenery changes with every tide, cuttlefish carry a remarkable form of memory that allows them to navigate uncertainty with subtle intelligence. They retain detailed recollections of places they have explored and distinguished between areas that offered rich prey and those that presented danger. Their memory includes the circumstances of each experience, such as the time of day or the quality of light filtering through the water. When returning to a familiar reef or sandbank, they behave as though consulting an inner timeline, adjusting their behavior based on a combination of location and context. This memory does not operate like a simple catalog of images. It functions as a flowing record of experiences stitched together across time.
It appears to help them predict which hiding places might still be safe, which hunting areas are likely to replenish, and which predators might linger. Even as cuttlefish age, they maintain this capacity with surprising clarity, showing a preservation of memory rarely witnessed in other ocean dwellers. Their intelligence emerges through a fusion of perception, recollection, and anticipation, allowing them to move through complex territory with a confidence shaped by lived experience. The brain uses sleep to strengthen hidden patterns you did not notice you learned. Throughout each day, the brain absorbs countless fragments of information that drift beneath conscious awareness. Words overheard, patterns glimpsed in passing, rhythms sensed during movement, and subtle shifts in tone or expression all settle quietly into neural circuits. When sleep arrives, these fragments awaken within the intricate waves of nocturnal brain activity. During lighter stages of rest, networks replay traces of waking experience, as if sorting through memories gathered earlier. As the night deepens, the brain begins reinforcing the patterns deemed valuable, linking them with related impressions and slowly weaving them into more stable forms. This process strengthens learning that felt vague during the day, turning faint impressions into accessible knowledge. People often wake with improved understanding of concepts that previously resisted clarity. Musicians find difficult passages easier. Language learners speak with smoother rhythm, and problem solvers discover clarity where confusion once reigned. Sleep serves as an unseen teacher, shaping cognitive growth in the hidden hours when awareness fades and internal rhythms carry the mind toward deeper integration. Some fish build intricate structures that reveal geometric understanding. In wide sandy plains beneath clear water, certain fish create astonishing circular formations composed of ridges and valleys shaped with steady precision. These structures span impressive distances and require sustained effort to maintain. The fish sweep the sand with repetitive motions, adjusting the depth of grooves and carefully managing symmetry. They orient their bodies in deliberate arcs, returning again and again to refine small sections until the entire formation reaches an elegant balance. Although driven by instinct, these creatures exhibit awareness of spatial relationships as they monitor angles, align contours, and correct disturbances caused by waves or drifting sand. The final structure resembles an underwater mandala, functioning both as a display for potential mates and as a demonstration of refined motor intelligence. The fish must hold the blueprint in memory throughout the construction process, maintaining consistent spacing and adjusting each segment in response to changing currents. Their artwork vanishes with time, but its creation reveals a remarkable ability to manipulate geometry through motion alone.
Human intelligence emerges from interactions between many tiny brain networks. Within the human brain, countless miniature networks operate simultaneously, each performing a different task. Some monitor sounds and shapes, others store fleeting impressions for use in the next breath of thought. Still others evaluate emotion, manage planning, construct language, or connect present experiences with past memories. No single network carries the full weight of intelligence. Instead, thought emerges from the shifting alliances formed between these circuits. During moments of reflection, they coordinate their rhythms, exchanging signals that travel through intricate pathways. When a challenge arises, networks that typically work separately may join forces, creating a temporary union that produces novel insight. Once the challenge passes, the networks dissolve back into their usual patterns. This constant formation and reformation of alliances allows the human mind to adapt to changing environments with remarkable speed. Intelligence lives not in isolation, but in the harmony, created by countless contributors working in dynamic balance. Certain birds practice songs in their sleep as their brains rehearse for dawn. Young birds learning to sing spend daylight hours absorbing the melodies of adults. These melodies hold social significance, marking territory and announcing identity. As night falls, the forest grows quiet, yet the learning continues in silence. Within the sleeping bird, neural circuits governing vocalization replay fragments of the day's songs. These internal echoes occur without physical movement, yet they activate the same sequences that control real singing. Through these nocturnal rehearsals, the bird adjusts pitch, timing, and rhythm, gradually transforming scattered notes into coherent melodies. When dawn arrives, the bird awakens with improved command over its voice, shaped by work performed in dreams. This nightly refinement continues for weeks or months, depending on the complexity of the species' song. By the time the bird sings with confidence at sunrise, the melody carries the imprint of countless silent practices woven through many nights of sleep. Problem solving improves when the brain shifts to using energy-efficient states. When confronting difficult challenges, the mind does not always rely on intense effort. Instead, it often shifts into a quieter mode where neural activity becomes more organized and efficient. This mode reduces unnecessary firing and concentrates resources along pathways most relevant to the problem. In this state, information flows with greater clarity, allowing subtle connections to emerge that would be drowned out during periods of high stress. The mental landscape becomes less cluttered, and ideas that once felt tangled begin to separate into understandable parts. Many breakthroughs occur during moments of calm reflection rather than forceful thinking, because the brain reaches optimal efficiency when tension relaxes. This transition into an energy-saving mode allows complex relationships to surface naturally, reflecting a deeper form of intelligence that depends on harmony rather than strain. Monkeys infer intentions from gestures in ways that mirror early human cognition. Monkeys living in complex social groups observe each other with keen alertness. Every gesture carries possible meaning. A relaxed reach may show peaceful intent. A slight hesitation may reveal uncertainty. A tightening of posture may signal an approaching challenge. Through constant exposure to such cues, monkeys develop a capacity to interpret the motives behind actions. They adjust their own responses based on these interpretations, choosing when to support an ally, avoid a potential dispute, or initiate cooperation. This ability parallels the development of social understanding in young human children, who also learn to read intention from motion rather than explicit instruction. For monkeys, this skill strengthens group cohesion, allowing smoother interaction within environments where misunderstanding could lead to conflict. Their perceptive intelligence emerges naturally from lives filled with observation, adaptation, and subtle interpretation. Human thought can momentarily synchronize across people during deep conversation. In certain moments of shared dialogue, two minds fall into an unusual form of harmony. As attention intensifies and emotion aligns, brain rhythms in both individuals begin to follow compatible patterns. This synchrony reflects more than simple agreement. It arises from simultaneous engagement with the same idea, forming a temporary shared mental landscape. During these moments, communication becomes fluid and effortless, as though each person understands the other with heightened clarity. The alignment strengthens when trust deepens or when the conversation touches on meaningful subjects. Although brief, these periods of synchrony reveal the profoundly social nature of human cognition. They show how thought can stretch beyond individual boundaries, forming a bridge between minds through the simple act of genuine connection. Wolves learn social rules by watching conflicts inside the pack. Young wolves grow up immersed in the shifting tensions of pack life. They observe quarrels over food, rank, and territory with unwavering attention. Each conflict teaches a different lesson. They learn who commands respect, who yields gracefully, and how disputes resolve without lasting resentment. They note the postures that signal challenge, the gestures that restore peace, and the timing that determines whether an interaction escalates or dissolves. Through these observations, wolves build a mental framework for navigating their own future roles. They eventually adopt behaviors that maintain harmony, reduce unnecessary violence, and strengthen group unity. Their understanding of social balance emerges gradually, shaped by countless moments of watching, learning, and absorbing the unwritten rules that govern pack stability. Human judgment uses mental shortcuts that often reveal hidden patterns in our environment. Throughout life, the brain learns to recognize subtle regularities in the world. It stores these regularities as rapid-acting mental shortcuts that guide decisions with impressive speed. A slight shift in someone's tone may signal emotional change. A faint environmental cue may reveal a hidden pattern. A familiar structure in a new situation may suggest a likely outcome. These shortcuts do not reflect carelessness. They reflect deep familiarity with repeated experiences. Although they occasionally mislead, they function well in environments that mirror the conditions in which they were learned. They allow humans to act quickly in complex situations where full analysis would be too slow. These patterns reveal how intelligence extends beyond deliberate thoughts, relying on quiet forms of knowledge accumulated through years of living. Some birds use tools to manipulate fire in a way that suggests causal understanding. Across certain dry landscapes, a few remarkable birds have learned to exploit the destructive power of fire, with a level of awareness rarely seen outside primates. When flames sweep through tall grass, these birds wait at the edges for fleeing insects, but their intelligence extends far beyond opportunistic feeding. Sometimes they pick up burning sticks, carry them to unburned patches of land, and drop them deliberately into dry brush. The resulting flare
learned through experience, memory, and experimentation, within a dangerous element that reshapes the environment itself. Human intelligence may increase when we form mental models of entire systems when people attempt to understand only isolated details. Their thinking remains narrow, yet when they begin constructing mental representations of entire interacting systems, their intelligence expands in reach and depth. A system can be a forest, a community, a scientific principle, or even the internal workings of a machine. To build such a model, the brain must track relationships among many moving parts, anticipate how changes ripple through the structure, and adjust predictions as new information arrives. This process strengthens areas involved in reasoning, working memory, and abstraction. It also encourages more flexible thinking because systems rarely behave in linear ways. People who habitually form broad mental models grow better at planning, innovation, and adaptation. They detect patterns hidden in complexity and foresee outcomes that escape minds focused only on fragments. By holding entire structures in mind, they allow intelligence to operate across layers of reality rather than within a single point. Primates understand reciprocity and track social debts over years. Within many primate groups, individuals remember who offered support, who shared food, and who withheld help during critical moments. These memories shape long-lasting social strategies. A primate that receives grooming during hardship may later assist the benefactor during a territorial dispute. Another that was ignored in a moment of need may quietly withhold support when the neglectful companion seeks help. These exchanges unfold not through immediate trade but through long-term tracking of relationships. Individuals monitor fairness, remember past interactions, and adjust their behavior accordingly. This form of reciprocity requires judgment, memory, and the ability to connect past behavior with future decisions. It also requires restraint because the benefits of maintaining social bonds extend far beyond a single encounter. Over years, these remembered debts form the foundation of alliances, peacekeeping, and stability. Within the group, the intelligence behind these exchanges shows that primates perceive social life as a web of obligations that must be honored to preserve harmony. Human memory strengthens when we connect new knowledge to personal meaning. The mind does not store information with equal weight. Facts learned without context often fade, quickly slipping from awareness as easily as they entered. Yet, when new knowledge resonates with personal experience or emotion, memory deepens dramatically. The brain binds the fresh information to existing networks of significance, weaving it into the fabric of identities. Connection activates areas involved in emotion, narrative, and long-term storage, anchoring the new material more firmly. Students who link scientific ideas to personal curiosity retain them longer. Readers who relate characters to their own feelings remember stories vividly. Anyone who ties abstract lessons to lived experience strengthens retention almost automatically. Meaning becomes the thread that stitches knowledge into lasting form when the mind incorporates information into its sense of self. Memory transforms from passive storage into active integration. Certain sharks navigate across oceans using magnetic fields as natural maps far from shore. Some sharks travel across vast open water with astonishing accuracy, often returning to the same feeding or breeding grounds year after year. They achieve this navigation through sensitivity to Earth's magnetic field. Their bodies contain specialized cells capable of detecting subtle shifts in magnetic intensity and orientation. As they swim, they gather information about the magnetic signature of each region, gradually building an internal representation of the world. Their performance shows that intelligence does not depend solely on brain size, but on the organization of neural circuits. The pigeon brain processes visual information with remarkable efficiency, allowing these birds to understand relationships among objects that appear completely different. This insight forces scientists to reconsider how widespread abstract reasoning may be in the natural world. Human minds evolve through culture, which changes faster than genetics ever could. Human intelligence develops within a cultural environment that transmits knowledge across generations, at speeds far surpassing biological evolution. Every individual inherits not only a body shaped by ancestry, but a world filled with stories, tools, symbols, and practices. Created by countless others, culture acts as an external memory that extends far beyond the capacity of isolated minds. As people learn from one another, they refine ideas, expand skills, and deepen collective understanding. Cultural evolution allows innovations to spread, rapidly accumulating layer upon layer of shared insight, while genetic changes require vast stretches of time. Cultural knowledge transforms within a single lifetime. This rapid exchange shapes how humans think, solve problems, and imagine possibilities. Intelligence becomes a product of collaboration across centuries, woven from the contributions of many minds acting together. Over time, the brain learns language by detecting tiny patterns in streams of sound. Long before a child understands the meaning of a single word, the brain is already absorbing the rhythm, melody, and statistical structure of the sounds flowing through daily life. As speech washes over the senses, the brain begins identifying repeating fragments, noticing which sounds tend to appear together and which rarely do. This process unfolds automatically, without conscious effort, revealing an extraordinary ability to extract structure from complexity. Even in noisy environments, the brain isolates syllables and probabilities gradually, carving boundaries between words that were never presented as separate units. Infants exposed to multiple languages simultaneously keep these patterns distinct, showing that the mind can track several sound systems at once. As learning continues, the brain strengthens connections that represent useful regularities and prunes those that do not. Meaning is layered onto this scaffolding, later built upon an underlying architecture formed through the recognition of subtle acoustic patterns. Language learning, therefore, begins not with vocabulary but with pattern detection, so fine-tuned that it can transform unbroken sound into a map of communication. Artificial neural networks discover surprising strategies that mirror biological intelligence. When researchers train advanced learning systems to solve complex tasks, these artificial networks often develop solutions no one anticipated. They reorganize information, build internal representations, and sometimes discover shortcuts that resemble strategies found in nature without being instructed to do so. They cluster similar concepts, compress data into meaningful structures, and form layers of abstraction that help them navigate new situations. In some cases, their internal workings echo patterns seen in animal brains, such as sparse coding, modular organization, and gradual refinement of internal models. These parallels emerge because both artificial and biological systems face similar challenges. When interpreting the world, each must filter noise, detect relevant structure, and form stable predictions. Artificial networks achieve this through vast numbers of simple units working together, while biological networks rely on neurons shaped by evolution. The similarities suggest that intelligence may follow certain universal principles whenever a system must learn from experience, regardless of whether it is made of silicon or living cells. Some insects use vibrations in plant stems as a covert communication system. In dense vegetation, where sound and scent easily scatter, certain insects have evolved a form of beneath the waves. This magnetic sense functions like a natural compass layered upon a global map. When currents change or storms disturb familiar routes, the sharks still locate their destinations by referencing the unseen structure of the planet itself. This ability requires more than instinct, because magnetic fields vary with depth, location, and time. The sharks interpret these variations, update their internal maps, and adjust their course accordingly. Through this remarkable capability, they navigate an environment with no visible landmarks, guided by an ancient intelligence attuned to the fabric of the earth. human insight accelerates. When we allow mental rest between difficult ideas during demanding thought, the mind often reaches a point where further effort produces only confusion. Yet when people step back, rest, or shift focus, insight frequently appears with unexpected clarity. This occurs because rest allows the brain to reorganize information without conscious pressure. Neural networks that were overloaded during intense concentration begin to settle into more coherent patterns. Hidden relationships among ideas strengthen and irrelevant noise fades as the mind relaxes. Fragments of understanding drift into new configurations, forming structures that were inaccessible during strain. This explains why breakthroughs often happen during walks, quiet moments, or gentle routines, rather than at the height of effort. Rest is not the absence of thinking, it is the space in which deeper connections form beyond deliberate awareness. In this softened state, insight arrives naturally, as though rising from the quiet depths of the mind. Orangutans use improvised solutions that reveal flexible foresight in dense rainforests. Orangutans face challenges that demand more than instinctive responses. They often encounter situations involving obstacles, hidden food, or unreachable resources. Instead of relying solely on learned routines, they improvise. An orangutan may choose a branch of a particular thickness to test the stability of crossing it, may strip leaves from a twig to create a tool for extracting insects or sap. In some cases, it combines several objects to achieve a specific goal, demonstrating an ability to imagine a future outcome and plan toward it. This foresight reflects a sophisticated understanding of cause and effect. Orangutans also adapt their strategies when circumstances change. If a tool breaks, they select a better one. If the environment shifts, they modify their approach. Their improvisation arises from observation, memory, and a flexible intelligence shaped by the complexities of forest life. Human intelligence thrives when diverse ideas interact inside a single mind. Creativity and insight flourish when the mind holds many different kinds of knowledge at once. When ideas from unrelated fields collide, they generate combinations that would never arise from a single discipline. A person who understands art and mathematics may discover patterns invisible to someone focused on only one. Someone familiar with both storytelling and engineering may find solutions that blend imagination with structure within the mind. These different domains mingle, compare, merge, and reshape one another. This interaction strengthens cognitive flexibility, broadens perspective, and encourages novel thinking. Diversity of thought becomes a catalyst for innovation because it allows the mind to draw connections across distant regions of understanding. The more varied the internal landscape, the more paths exist for intelligence to travel. Pigeons learn abstract rules that scientists thought required large brains in controlled experiments. Pigeons demonstrate abilities that challenge assumptions about cognitive complexity. They learn to categorize objects not by memorizing individual examples, but by identifying general principles that apply across many variations. They can distinguish patterns involving relative size, shape, or brightness, even when the specific items change each time. These tests reveal that pigeons grasp abstract concepts, applying rules flexibly rather than relying on repetition. Communication that travels through the structure of the plants themselves instead of calling through the air. They create faint pulses that travel along stems and leaves. These vibrations carry information about danger, location, and readiness to mate. Because the signals move through solid material, they are less likely to be detected by predators. Each species shapes its vibrations with specific rhythms and intensities, forming an intricate language that others of the same kind can decode. Instantly, some insects even adjust their signals based on wind conditions or plant stiffness, showing a flexible awareness of how physical environments shape communication. Researchers studying these systems discover layers of complexity hidden beneath what appears at first glance to be silent foliage. This covert communication reveals that intelligence can thrive even in tiny bodies when evolution supplies subtle channels for transmitting knowledge. Human thinking improves when we explore questions with no clear answers. When people confront uncertainty, the mind stretches beyond routine patterns. Wrestling with questions that resist simple solutions forces the brain to experiment with new connections and explore unfamiliar perspectives. Instead of relying on well-worn pathways, cognition shifts into a more flexible mode where creativity and insight become more accessible. This process encourages tolerance for ambiguity, strengthens reasoning, and deepens curiosity. Even when no final answer emerges, the act of exploring the unknown expands the mental landscape. Such questions invite reflection, imagination, and the kind of cognitive wandering that supports innovation. They teach the mind to remain open, to consider multiple possibilities, and to recognize that understanding often grows from the search itself. By engaging with uncertainty, human intelligence becomes more adaptive, more resilient, and more capable of uncovering hidden layers of meaning. Primates modify tools in ways that show an understanding of causality across various habitats. Primates demonstrate a sophisticated grasp of how objects interact with the world. When faced with obstacles that block access to food, they select sticks, stones, or leaves and reshape them to improve their effectiveness. A primate may shorten the branch for better control, sharpen one end to extract insects, or adjust the thickness to increase strength. These modifications reveal an ability to predict how altering a tool will change the outcome of the task. The behavior requires foresight, experimentation, and memory of past successes. It also reflects an understanding that tools can act as extensions of the body, serving as intermediaries between intention and environment. When primates refine these tools, they show more than simple trial and error. They reveal causal reasoning grounded in observation and guided by insight into how the physical world works. Human intelligence often peaks when we collaborate rather than compete. While individuals can achieve remarkable feats of insight, collaboration unlocks forms of intelligence that do not appear in isolation. When people share ideas, critique assumptions, and build upon each other's thoughts, they create an environment where cognitive strengths combine. One person may notice a pattern another overlooked. Someone else may reframe the problem in a way that clarifies its structure. Through conversation and joint exploration, a group can develop solutions no member would have reached alone. This form of collective intelligence thrives on communication, empathy, and the willingness to integrate diverse perspectives. It also reflects humanity's deep evolutionary history, in which cooperation supported survival and shaped the development of complex thought. When minds work together, they create a whole greater than the sum of its parts, revealing that intelligence is not merely an individual trait, but a shared capacity that flourishes through connection. Certain whales learn songs that spread across oceans like cultural waves in the vastness of the open sea. Some whale species produce intricate songs that travel for great distances. These melodies are not fixed, they change through time as individuals introduce new phrases, rhythms, and structures. Other whales adopt these modifications, gradually transforming the song into a shared cultural creation. As migrations bring distant populations into contact, the updated versions spread across thousands of miles until entire regions share a single evolving composition. This cultural transmission requires memory, imitation, and sensitivity to subtle acoustic detail. It also reveals a social intelligence capable of maintaining traditions across enormous distances. Whale song becomes a living artifact, shaped by collective creativity, reflecting the dynamic interplay between communication, learning, and social bonding in the oceans. Hidden world, humans think more deeply when surrounded by environments that encourage reflection. The mind responds to surroundings with surprising sensitivity. Natural landscapes, quiet spaces, and environments with gentle sensory input often support deeper thought in such places. Mental noise decreases, allowing attention to settle, and ideas to unfold with greater clarity. Refraction becomes easier when the senses are not overwhelmed, giving the brain room to process complex information. These environments help people step back from immediate concerns and consider broader perspectives. They also allow memories and insights to surface that might remain buried in more chaotic settings, whether walking among trees, sitting near water, or simply resting in a calm room. Humans often access richer forms of thought when the world around them becomes quieter. The setting acts as a cognitive partner, guiding the mind toward careful observation and deeper awareness. Some animals show early signs of counting through subtle neural responses, even without language or formal symbols. Some species display primitive forms of numerical awareness. They show distinct neural activity when the number of objects in their environment changes. Unexpectedly, these patterns appear even in very young individuals, suggesting that sensitivity to quantity emerges naturally rather than through training. Animals may use this awareness to judge group size, identify potential threats, or choose the most advantageous feeding site. The neural signatures reveal that their brains treat numerical changes as meaningful events, responding differently to increases, decreases, and stable quantities, while far simpler than human mathematics. This early numerical sense provides a foundation for more complex reasoning. It also shows that intelligence can arise through basic cognitive building blocks that evolve long before symbolic thought. Human intelligence may be expanding as we integrate with the machines we create. As technology becomes woven into daily life, human cognition evolves alongside it. People extend memory through digital storage, amplify pattern recognition through analytical tools, and explore ideas with computational assistance. These machines do not replace thought, they expand its reach, transforming how humans learn, create, and understand the world. Interacting with technology encourages new forms of problem-solving that blend biological intuition with artificial precision. It also reshapes communication, collaboration, and the pace at which knowledge grows over time. This partnership between human and machine forms a hybrid intelligence capable of insights neither could achieve alone. The merging is not physical, but cognitive, built through constant exchange between organic minds and the tools they design. As this integration deepens, human intelligence stretches into new territories, reflecting an ever-expanding interplay between creativity and invention. As we drift to the end of this quiet journey through the many shapes of intelligence, allow yourself to feel the soft settling of your mind. You have traveled across oceans and forests and sky. You have wandered through hidden networks of thought within the brain and delicate moments of insight within the natural world. You have followed sparks of understanding as they moved between animals, cultures, machines, and memories. Now, everything begins to slow. If you enjoyed this peaceful exploration, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a thought below. Your support helps more sleepy thinkers Find this little corner of calm where science becomes a gentle companion. To rest for now, simply breathe. Let your shoulders fall, let your attention soften, let the ideas you met tonight fade into a warm glow. At the edges of awareness you do not need to hold any of it, you can let go. The night is here to cradle you. Your mind has done enough. Settle into the quiet good night.